special guest today is Urmai Hossain, and she is the author. She's got a very interesting story, but she's also the author of a book called Discovering Your True Identity. And she's also employed full-time in the financial services industry, but she has a really interesting story to tell with the book that she just wrote. It was just released about 2 months ago, Discovering Your True Identity. Urmi, thanks so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
Good. So, and by the way, I guess I'll just mention as a side note that she was born in Italy and lived in Italy for a while. But I guess I wanted to ask you first, how did you decide to do this book, Discovering Your True Identity?
So I actually decided to write this book. Well, it was not in my plan, at least not for this year.
Uh-huh.
I always had a plan of writing a book, but I never knew what I wanted to talk about.
Uh-huh.
And then I was inspired by another girl who wrote something similar, like the one that I have written. So
Uh-huh.
I read her book and I felt very much inspired. So I reached her out and I said, okay, how did you publish your book? How did you write your book? And
Right.
she told me that her main reasoning for writing the book was just to cope with the difficulty that she was going through in her life.
Uh-huh.
And then she was like, oh, I just self-published it. And she said there is a lot of available resources online. So then I was like, you know what? I think I want to do something like that too, where I just want to express all my emotions and my frustrations. And
Right.
then what happened is I read this book, which says like how to write a book in 30 days. So I read
Uh-huh.
that and then I was like, okay, I'm going to do the same thing
Uh-huh.
too. So I read that book and then right after, like literally in June, I started to write off my book and I was just motivated. I just had this drive and I was like, okay, I'm going to write it. And I'm just
Yes.
going to go ahead and just write down all the thoughts that I have in my mind. And then I'm going to work on it after. So I had an initial draft ready.
Uh-huh.
And then after doing the initial draft, I was like, okay, this is how I want to divide each chapter. And this is what I want people to know. So in this book, I do talk about a little bit my experience being a third culture kid, because I was born and raised in Italy and my parents are from Bangladesh. So it was a little bit of a struggle for me to like fit into the Italian world, but also in the Bengali world. So sometimes I never felt like I was good enough for either one of the world. And I
Uh-huh.
do talk about a little bit of episodes of me like going to school to Italy or
Uh-huh.
having Italian friends
Yes.
or things like that. So it was just something that came up like literally this year, but it wasn't in my plan. Like it was eventually my plan to write a book, but not this year. So I just went with it this year.
So what was your experience like? I know you were born in Italy. Was it easy to make friends? Like, were people accepting of you because you're not Italian? I mean, you were Italian because you're born there, but your family is from Bangladesh. So certainly you have that culture, that's your family's culture. So were people accepting of you in Italy? Was it easy to make friends?
Yeah, it was very easy actually. Like for me, everything was super easy. I know that even for my Italian friends was something new as well, because the schools I attended, they didn't have a lot of immigrant kids. So even for them to see someone who's like technically like different, like at
Right.
least aesthetically different, was something new to them. But it was very easy for me to integrate, and I never felt like I was less of anything. And so I integrated really, really well. And I would say that my closest friends are actually Italian, because that's where I felt like I could be myself. But then I
Uh-huh.
knew that there was a little bit of clash when I would go home, because I had so much of that open-minded mentality going on.
Yes.
So when I would go back home, there was a little bit of like, I felt like I was clashing a little bit, because
Uh-huh.
it's a very strict culture, the Bengali culture, and it's
Okay.
very conservative. So I always felt like it
Oh,
was clashing in a way. Yeah.
yes, yes. How about dressing? Like, since you're mentioning conservative, and I know Italy is not extremely conservative when it comes to dressing. So how is that? I'm sure your parents had some strict rules, and in Italy, it's a lot more open as far as the way you dress.
Yeah, so my parents they were okay with how I was dressing, but of course, like, they always wanted me to be covered.
Huh?
And often in times they would also tell me to wear like traditional clothes when I would go out and stuff like
Right.
that. So I remember when I would do that, I would have people staring at me because, as I mentioned before, this was new to them. So they didn't know what kind of clothes we wear.
Oh, yes.
So when I would go out, let's say for like things like grocery and stuff like that, and I would wear those type of clothes, I always felt like people were like staring at me.
Uh-huh.
And when I would go to school, I would just wear normal clothes, shirts, t-shirt and stuff like that. But of
Right.
course there was also that type of clash as well, because I did have sometimes my Italian friends ask me, okay, why do I not see you ever wearing like mini skirts or
Uh-huh.
showing off your legs? And I would always tell them it's because it's predated from the actual culture.
Right, right, exactly. Yes, I know in Italy they always want you to wear mini skirts or
Yeah.
bikini, and they're more open as far as dressing, but I would assume that was a stricter, yet your culture is definitely stricter than that. But that's really nice. So you were able to integrate. How about like the foods and things? Were you able to find foods that, well, you were born in Italy, so you're going to be, probably used to eating there, but I'm assuming your family probably made their typical food. So were you able to adjust with the way the Italians eat and eating there and getting your own foods there? Were you able to find things?
Yeah, so at home, my parents would make a lot of Bengali food because that's what they eat. So like we
Exactly.
use a lot of spices and a lot of spicy food. So I was not used to it, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Uh-huh.
And every time I would come back from school, I would tell my mom, no, I want to eat pasta. So I'm a big pasta eater. I love
Uh-huh.
pasta.
Uh-huh.
And I would, every time I would see rice, I would always make complaints and be like, no, I want to eat pasta. But this is the thing, my parents, even though they like to eat Bengali food, rice, chicken curry and stuff like that, they still also integrated the Italian food at home. So they would make like lasagna, they would make pasta and stuff like
Right.
that.
Oh, that's
And I
great.
think that's where it started, my love for pasta, because they actually introduced me to pasta. And
Uh-huh.
then in Italy, when you go to school, basically, I think the primary school, because it's like 8:30 to 5 o'clock, you have this 2 hours lunch break where you have to eat at school.
Yes.
It's a program like offered by the schools where you have to eat. And there I would eat
Yes.
like a lot of Italian food. And I think that's how my love for Italian food just grew and grew. And
Yes.
so I love, like, if you ever ask me which cuisine do you like, I'm always gonna tell you I love Italian food, because I just find a lot of satisfaction and content when I eat Italian food.
And
And
I'm told that the school food is pretty good also, right?
it's super good. It's super good,
Yes,
yeah.
that's what I was told. Yes, many times. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's how, and there are ways to incorporate, to kind of blend cultures in foods too. Like you might be able to make some pasta dishes with some of the spices you're used to. So
Yes.
I know I've done that with different, not traditional Italian spices, but spices that are actually have health benefits, to put them in, different dishes that are not traditional spices. So there are ways to incorporate that and kind of do a nice blend of the culture. So that's great. So you were able then to assimilate into the culture there in Italy, eating wise and going to school, you said, making friends. And
Yes.
so is there a community? I know different countries and even Italy, I know there are different areas where they have like a community of people from different areas. Were you living in an area that might have been a community of people from Bengal, people that were from Bengali or
Um, Not exactly. So I would say that everyone there was basically people that were from Bangladesh, they were pretty much scattered all over Italy. And
uh-huh,
even within city, we didn't have an actual area they would say, okay, this is just for this kind of people. We were all pretty much like spread all over the city. But
right,
when we would gather together, we would always go to the specific place, like to the specific like piazza. That's how we call it.
Yes, the piazza.
Piazza.
Yes.
And we did have like also big communities back when I was living there. So we did have a lot of people from Bangladesh. We had
Yes.
people from other communities as well. But
Yes.
now a lot of people have moved out from Italy. Like they all went to other countries. They went to UK, they went to other places. But back in the days, we did have a big communities, and we were pretty much spread all over Italy, everywhere, basically.
So Bangladesh is the country you're from. And I said Bengali, but is Bengali the culture? Tell me what the difference is. So Bangladesh is the place that your family's from, and Bengali
Is the people, are the people.
is the people from
Yeah.
Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Okay. That was my mistake. But yes, just so my listeners know too. So, well, that was nice that you didn't just stick to a community of people from Bangladesh, because, you're living in Italy, so you want to try and assimilate, also into the culture there as well. But I do remember, I know even in Rome, there were different pockets in different neighborhoods of people from different countries, and there would be stores that sold the types of products, foods and all that they were accustomed to also.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's nice. Well, that's a really nice experience. So are you still living in Italy?
No, I moved to Canada. I've been living in
Oh,
Canada
okay.
for
So
some
you're in
time.
Canada.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So,
Yeah.
but that's a nice experience that at least you got to live there and experience that also. And so how is it living in Canada now? Same thing, like you're able to assimilate and all of that?
Yeah, Canada, it's more like a melting pot
Uh-huh.
because in Italy we didn't have, like, we do have immigrants, but we don't have that many. Like you
Right.
see much more Italian people, but in
Yes.
Canada I feel like you see a little bit of everything, and it's not like a small proportion of this, a small proportion of that. You see a little bit of everything in an equal proportion, and so I feel like it's much easier to assimilate in Canada, and it's much easier to find people that are from mixed backgrounds. It's not just one background. You have people with like
Yes.
2 or 3 backgrounds. And I think that's
Yes.
what makes Canada so interesting. And I have met a lot of Italian people in Canada, which is
Canada,
why I
yes.
think I like it, because I feel like you feel less at home. And we do have a lot of Italian stores that,
Yes.
import food from Italy. So you
Yes.
don't really feel like you're missing home, besides, of course, the
Yes.
city and stuff like that. But
Yes.
we do have a very big community of Italian people in Canada for sure.
Definitely. Yes, I know they do. Yes, I've even had some products sold there that in specific pockets of, there's large Italian communities. That's great. That's great. Well, Urmai, so tell people where they can find your book, Discovering Your True Identity. That's the title, right?
It's called Discovering Your Identity,
Your Identity.
a rebirth from interracial struggle.
Uh-huh.
So my book is available on Amazon, and anyone can purchase it.
Okay.
I also have a blog, so people can
Yes.
subscribe to my blog. It's called myways.ca. I also have a YouTube channel. It's my full name, Urmai Hossain, and people can also connect with me on LinkedIn. They just have to type my name, Urmai Hossain.
Okay, and I'll try and have that on the website for this show, the marialiberati.show.com, so people can follow you also. That's great. Well, thank you for being on, and much success with the book.
Thank you.